Friday, I get number 1, so I'll take care of that.
Just to, and these are just off the top of my head here, John, as we're looking at this, is, I'm thinking how we make it condensed to fit, and maybe if we could slide a lot of this information, like term of a loan, a 10-year annual payment.
For a total cost of, yeah.
Yeah, just slide it across,
Yeah.
that would help out, and I'd probably, I had the parentheses in mind, just so I remembered how we calculated the 27 cents, but
Mhm.
do we take that off?
On, I mean, this little piece here?
Yes.
That's it, I don't know, you let me know, I mean.
That was just how, so that when I sent it to you, you could
Mhm.
understand how I calculated that out. That's
can
all
take-
it was, yeah.
I could take, and then, but we leave the other piece in there, the tax increase will vary
Yes.
depending on.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can do the same with this, I can stretch this
Yeah,
out across here.
Yeah. Although that one there, maybe because it's in that mathematical,
Mm-hmm.
just put an underline under the 700s that they realize it's a tally.
Okay.
Just reading number 6, I think would be a good segue for you to tell the board about your meeting last week with Congresswoman Custis.
Right, so there was a workshop that Congresswoman Custer had out in Keene, introducing municipalities, businesses, et cetera, to some of the different grants and funding opportunities that are out there. And I think there were six or seven different agencies, state and federal agencies represented there. And I'm trying to dig into a little bit more about what funding mechanism might be available to help us with the police station as well as other potential projects. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture just has a huge portfolio of programs, and they actually had money left over last fiscal year because they didn't get enough requests. So this year they have, I believe he said, about another $660 million for their programs for rural America. New Hampshire is obviously a big part of that. And that's spread across the 50 states, but again, amazingly, they had about a similar amount last fiscal year and didn't get requests to use it all. So I actually have a representative from Congresswoman Custer's office coming to see me next week this event, and, you know, he wants to get a better idea of the different types of projects we might be considering, and he's gonna try to help line us up with the right programs that are out there. And, can even get us some, assistance in grant writing, if we needed it as well. So I'm gonna be interested to see what he has to say. But the USDA just has a tremendous amount of orders. There are so many, I mean, it's almost like a catalog. The challenge that we're gonna have is whether we meet all the criteria to be eligible for those programs. And that's something we have to dig into, because a lot of them, especially when you're going after public safety type of projects, you know, your emergency management plan has to be up to date, your master plan has to be up to date. There are certain things that we're gonna be asked to have ready when we apply. So I think part of the exercise for me is digging into all of these programs, and in some cases, we might even be, for a single project like this, sometimes you can find a combination of programs, and these people do work together so that you can more fully fund a project. So it's gonna be interesting to see where it leads and what we could come up with. One agency that wasn't there was FEMA, and FEMA generally has a lot of grant opportunities for public safety and communication. So I'm hoping that Tom Giancola, when I meet with him next week, will be able to give me some contacts there too, so we can dig into that. They usually, if I recall, it's around November that they introduce the next round of FEMA grants, and then you have so much time to respond to them and get your requests in. So once they open that process up, we'd have to move pretty fast on at least the FEMA grants, in my experience.
Okay.
Could you let us know when you're meeting, so maybe one of us could attend?
So it is, I can tell you what that is right now.
I don't know that I'll be available, but maybe one of us would. Second set of ears wouldn't hurt.
So I'm meeting with him on Thursday, the 24th at 10:30. He's coming here.
What was the time again?
10:30.
10:30.
Yep. And there's other things that I wanna talk to him about, how her office might be able to assist us with all things municipal, and see what they've done for other communities, and see if we can try to leverage some of that for us.
Very good.
Awesome.
On number 7, I would probably put a period right after owners of the property, if you agree.
That's fine. There's a typo on 11 that I've already found.
Okay.
Because at one point we talked about, you had asked whether we wanted to, when we saw that the fund balance had increased, you and I had mentioned whether we were gonna go to a higher amount. So that's why I had, so somewhere between, I'm just taking out the
Okay.
words. So,
Should we just, the board? The board will ask.
the board
for
still
vote of
plans to ask.
approval to use what did we have in the warrant last year? 700?
700.
700. So if we've increased that almost 200, even if we said 800,000? Do you wanna put a number that we agree on now, or do you wanna leave a variable and decide when the warrant article is written? Or just keep it at 700?
I mean,
Because the front calculation was based on 700.
mhm.
If we used more of the fund balance, then we should recalculate that and
Right.
use that figure on the front.
Right. So, I mean, I'm fine with attempting to, use more, but I'm also fine with the number as is. I think 27 cents is
Pretty cheap.
pretty cheap.
Yeah, if it went to 26, it's not gonna make the difference.
Right.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So.
You agree,
I'll-
Bert?
I'm not happy with the entire concept. I've already expressed that opinion.
So what's your concept?
My concept is, I think the contingency needs to be changed, and I'm unhappy about using so much of the fund balance because we may have other obligations.
What other obligations do we have?
We're in public session, I don't think I can express those, but we may have some other bills coming up.
But not that would come out of fund balance.
It may have to, I don't know, it may come out of taxes, it may come out of the tax rate, I don't know where the money's coming from at this point.
We just had that conversation where the funds is coming from.
A portion of it, yes.
No, all of it.
Well, I don't agree.
Bert,
But I'm obviously outvoted, so please
it's
continue.
not a vote. It's not a vote. It's that we're discussing as a board what we should be presenting to the town. That's what we should be.
I've already
doing.
expressed my opinion in that matter.
Well, you just brought up a new issue regarding the use of the fund balance.
Right, and I
Well, we
think,
just had a discussion about the issue at hand of how it was going to be funded, and nowhere in that discussion does it say that it would come out of fund balance. It's done,
but it has to come out of some,
it comes out of overlay and the evaluation. That's what we,
I understand that, but there may
I
be
don't think
other
you do.
obligations. I do absolutely understand that.
But the other obligations have to either be an emergency situation approved by DRA, or it has to be a warrant article put forth to the voters.
Correct. But, again, the way this entire concept is being presented, I do not agree with. So, I'm outvoted 2-1, which is fine. Please go ahead.
Okay. Just reword 11
Yep.
to say the board still plans to request approval of the voters to use, and I would just write it as a figure, $700,000 of fund balance to offset the cost of the project, bringing the bond and tax impact down considerably. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The board would have no intention of undertaking any other bond commitment till the police facility bond was paid in full, which is 10 years.
Right.
Just add that.
Which is
Be
10.
for 10 years, just in case they didn't pick it up on the front. Now, how do we get this on to? We're not gonna get it onto one, or would it? We could get this onto an 11 by 17.
I think so. I can work on it.
I'm thinking when you,
Because what I thought too was just to, like here, why do, I could take these, bullet point them,
oh, yeah,
so that I could shrink that area up. Bring, this I would think would still stay kind of
Yeah.
where it is.
yeah.
We've talked about bullet pointing this a little bit more, so we can shrink some space up.
I'm thinking with an 11 by 17, we can print on 1.5
Mm-hmm.
portion of that. So if you had this, and this.
Yeah, I can work on it, because I can print on 11 by 17 at my work, so.
Okay. Anything else you can think of that we need to add?
They say 11 or 8.5 by 8.5.
This is in the half by 11, 11 by
Right.
17 is twice.
Right, so you're taking, you talking doubling it both ways, or
No,
just
11 by
8.5 by?
17 is gonna come out to here.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah,
I'm just trying to think when it goes to the printer and mailer
yeah,
guy, there was, I remember on the 8.5 by 11s, we used to have to give him half the page for postage
Yeah.
information.
okay. I'll work on
Uh,
it. I'll see what I can come up with.
yeah. Maybe that might give you the opportunity to increase that.
Yeah,
This. I'd say if you could do that and then see if Tim comes back with any comments that we need to incorporate.
okay.
If we do a mailer in, say, within the next 2 weeks. I think to get this out in front of the voters again, do we plan on not a public hearing, but a public discussion, again, similar to what we had done in the spring? And then, based on responses at that point in time, we decide to develop the warrant article and then proceed with the public hearings?
Yeah, but yeah, do the mailer, public session of just discussion, and then move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you follow up with Tim to see if he has any comments?
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, should we put that on here, a date and time?
We could, I mean, we can put it, like, it'll be in that mailer section, but yeah, let's just make sure we firm this up and then see what
Yeah.
we got and then go
Maybe
from there.
just block out a space that we
Yeah.
remember, but
Yeah.
has that as an opportunity.
Yeah, I'll put, meeting date.
Any suggestions?
Yeah, I have some, I've received some feedback, just talking with people from the community. What I'd like to do is put that in the form of an email to the three of you.
Okay.
Great.
Good. So we're all set with that.
Yep.
The tower?
Okay, cell tower. Let's see. Make copies for everyone. So from what I'm understanding on this is, this is really just a sample agreement, kind of like a template. But it sounds like there's potentially a lot of latitude in how we can structure this. There are certainly some technical considerations, and we did get some feedback from our communications vendor. And the concern is that until the planning board, settles and there's a final plan for this, it's gonna be difficult for the vendor to give us any accurate pricing on what it would cost to install, the police communications equipment. And the other piece of it is, do we make allowances now for emergency management, fire, DPW, all to be able to share that footprint? Because that changes the equipment and how much equipment would have to go into that facility.
But my understanding currently is that DPW does not have any communication via antennas. Is this a request that they've made?
It is not, it's just planning for the future. And this is one of those things where we have an opportunity and we wanna make sure that especially where you're getting a $1 a year lease agreement,
Yeah.
that you try to squeeze as much in to
Oh,
that buck as far as, the amount of facility you can set aside.
I agree that we should be looking at, as part of the agreement with the cell tower provider, that the town be provided with a space to put those devices.
Correct, yeah, just
What I'm
for
saying,
space for the future.
space for the future.
Yeah.
In my conversation though with Tim, since he's the one with the imminent need with the communication, because we have one there now that is lower. With his, he was talking about the need to purchase new equipment because of the age of what his current equipment is. And with that, I would like to propose to the vendor meaning cell tower vendor,
Mhm.
that we provide, if they would be amenable, one of those negotiation things, if we provide them with the equipment that they install, so that we're not going out to a third-party vendor and incurring the cost. If
Mhm.
they're gonna be there installing other equipment, then maybe that might be a,
Would you suggest paying them for that installation?
no.
That they would do it for free?
If I'm gonna pay them or pay another vendor.
Oh, no, I'm just asking which way you.
I'm trying to get them to
I
be
ca-
good citizens and
I-
contribute
I-
running a wire or mounting an antenna while they're there.
I did ask that particular question at the last meeting with them, and they said, no, they would not. We can ask the question
We
again.
can ask again.
Can do.
Yep. I'd like to ask you, Scott, if you can find the time to look in the file and see what the agreement was we had with US Cellular when they got the approval to put the tower up.
Mhm.
They never did, but I know we had an agreement with them.
All right, I'll do that.
I was hoping Tim would come back with our space requirements. like, mentioned a 4x4 area on the ground. I don't know if that's adequate for our lots.
Well, let me see.
I mean, I don't know the technical requirements for this, nor do I know the technical requirements for the space on the tower or the height.
So the communications vendor gave us some feedback on this. Just for police, they would want a 4x8 footprint. But if we were gonna take into consideration future requirements, it may have to be bigger than that.
What are they planning to put in that 4x8?
So, that would be a cabinet, a generator, and they're saying you need at least a 14-inch spacing between the generator housing and the generator.
Now, they will have a generator on site to support the other antennas. It's possible we could tap into theirs.
You wouldn't be able to without different electrical hookups and whatnot, which would mean that they'd be providing the electrical service, which
Yeah, I don't think
in
they're,
here they are not
Right,
going to.
I understand that.
yeah, and the other thing is that the fuel source for the generator is gonna have to be 10 feet away from the generator. So,
It depends on what you're using for the fuel source.
well, they're assuming propane.
Well, my question to Tim the other day was, how do you handle it now? Well, we bring a portable generator up there. I don't think the town is gonna have the means unless there's some other funding available to purchase and install a generator up there that,
So the, kind of the logistics of that, Tim and I were talking about, is in the event that you have, a storm that knocks out the power, it would probably be impossible for one of his guys to get up there to hook up a generator.
Yes.
So it's
but it
almost,
wouldn't be his guys. We're saying the DPW.
Well, they are not plowing the roadways to access this thing during the winter.
But that road is plowed because people live up there.
I,
So there's access up there.
okay,
And if we had to have them go up there and plow that road with a loader or whatever, we as a town
we do so.
have those means.
We
Yeah.
have a front-end loader, sure.
yeah, the concern is that those resources may be needed elsewhere.
Mhm.
And, trying to deal with one set of issues and then go deal with that too, might not be practical in a storm situation. So that was one concern. The other concern is that, the tower company reserves the right to shut down the facility completely under certain circumstances, which makes the generator a moot point because they're gonna shut down everything that's on the tower. So that was a little bit of a concern, because again, in the middle of a major event, the last thing you want to do is lose your communication. So I think that's something we need to discuss and understand what they mean when they say that.
Yeah,
And,
Because I'm trying to think, how would they shut down the towns?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And it wasn't just shutting down the facility, it was also closing off access for anybody else to get near it for safety reasons.
Well, I mean, it's gonna have a gate or a full 6-foot fence around the thing locked.
Yeah,
Again, they didn't even suggest we get a key to the thing.
right. So, I think those are kind of the logistic items that we need to understand.
Bart's concerned with item number 2. I'm kind of,
And again, this being kind of a boilerplate.
yeah, but they're saying the initial term would be for a period of 1 year.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's.
but then you go to paragraph B.
B, and it says that it would be automatically renewed every year without any further action. And the only time that the lessor can cancel this, if I'm reading it correctly, is if they intend to dismantle the tower site.
Well, no, if I'm reading the rest of that correctly, if they give us 30 days notice,
Prior to the expiration of the incurrent term or renewal term of its intent not to renew the term of this agreement. Notwithstanding the foregoing, this agreement may be terminated by lessor at any time during the then current term or any renewal term if the lessor provides 30 days written notice to lessee that the lessor intends to dismantle the tower site in its sole and absolute discretion.
that seems very short notice. I would think
But I think what Bart was saying was not so much it being a short notice, was that you only have a 1-year lease and that they can cancel it. And I would agree with him on that. If it's that they can just cancel it and keep operating. But if it's that they can only cancel it, being that they've given us 30 days notice that they're going to be taking the tower down, I would probably just argue for the longer notice, but a year-to-year automatic renewed lease, I don't know that
I mean, does that, I mean, if it's automatically renewed, does that harm us in any way other than,
yeah, we might,
No, because it says you, either lessor or lessee can terminate within they have to notify within 30 days of the expiration of the current lease. So if we get to the end of it and we figure out someone else is putting a tower somewhere else and they're giving us a better deal, we can, within 30 days of the expiration, either one can.
yeah, I don't,
and I think we can afford to forfeit the $1 annual.
Right.
yeah, can swing that. All right. Yeah, it says prior to the expiration. That means, I think, if I'm reading the legalese in that correctly, it means any time within that 1-year time frame.
No. No, within,
But, you know, I mean, if you canceled, say, 2 months prior to the expiration, you're still 30 days prior to the expiration.
yes, yeah,
So I'm saying that if, say it expired on the 1st of January, if they canceled, if they told us in the 1st of November, they would still be within
yeah.
keeping
yes,
Correct.
of that contract.
yes.
But it would never be canceled any earlier than January 1st. In other words, they couldn't tell us on June 1st and expect us out of there on July 1st.
Well, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
read into this to make sure that.
Well, it
you're-
sounds like, yeah,
you're-
they could tell you 6 months ahead of time, hey, we're gonna cancel your lease, but our lease is still good until the end of the term, unless they're going to dismantle the tower.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask for a clarification on that one from the attorney that's presenting this thing, just to make sure I understand it and that we all understand it correctly.
And I agree with his comment about that we shouldn't be paying property taxes.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Box
Oh, in item 7?
7.
Okay, let's go through that one. That's a big no. No. Scott, did Tim come back with any requirement for how high he needed his antenna mounted? I mean, I assume higher is better, but,
I don't have those specifics.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
Got it.
I think there's,
8D.
there's a lot of unknowns, I'm not sure
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
I'm reading that 8C that Bart referred to, and as I read it, they're referring to subparagraph 8C below. But
Yeah,
there
should be 8D.
could be. What is he? I think there's a, yeah, okay. You know, and if you could send this to Primex for 10 and 13, the Bart references for insurance
Mhm.
indemnification. I agree with Bart on number 22. That if they ask if they need to have it relocated, why would it be at our expense and not theirs?
What was Bart's particular issue with number 13?
It's an insurance issue.
I know, but I mean,
His advice is to have the insurance company look at it.
okay, that's fine.
Bless you.
Thank you.
His concern with I, have a trial by jury. Nowhere, am I reading what they're proposing? So how is it left with this, applicant? Are they looking for us to respond to this? Or is this just provided as a baseline and as they go through the process?
This is their standard agreement that they throw out. Obviously, we don't have to accept it, or we can modify it or suggest modifications depending what they will agree to. And it's, going to require some negotiations. The other thing is that the attorney for this is going to have to appear before the Board of Selectmen because they are doing improvements on a Class 6 road, and we have to give them permission to do so. So we're going to get at least 2 shots at them. One other thing that's not mentioned in here, but it's going to be part of the agreement that is going to be to the town, is the planning board's requiring a no-cut zone around the tower for the duration of the tower's standing, simply because one of the zoning bylaws says it's not supposed to be visible from various points around the town. The balloon test showed that it was only visible from a few spots around town, and it didn't appear to be a public nuisance. But it's going to be the enforcement of that no-cut zone that's going to be the question. What happens if they violate it?
Who's they?
The owner, Glavy. Say he goes in and does a little logging or something else up there.
But you're referring, I hope, only to that parcel.
Only to that parcel.
Right, because we could never enforce that if you...
Agreed. No, it's just to that parcel, around the parcel. I think the clear zone, or the radius for the tower is over 200 feet to the nearest property line from the location.
Okay.
But the no-cut zone's like 175 feet circle around it. It's fairly substantial. It's just...
Why?
They're just trying to avoid cutting any trees around it so that the tower becomes visible from any public way or nuisance.
But do they know that it would?
They do not know that it would or would not. It's simply that that's what they suggested, and we said, okay, fine. The question is enforcement. What happens if Mr. Glavy does violate that particular agreement? I mean,
I don't know why they're trying to put a stipulation if they don't know.
They're trying to meet the zoning bylaw in whatever way they possibly can. It's an offering, peace offering, a bargaining chip. And they're going to put a plan on record to that effect of a no-cut zone.
So the applicant was amenable to that?
He was.
I think until we get further down the road, we probably just keep this on the back burner.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably got, I know he'd like to close this out, and we have 150 days from the opening of the hearing, which was in September, first meeting of September, so we've still got another couple months that we have to act upon this.
Well, the other concern is, depending what the planning board wants to do with approving it, would be to approve it contingent upon, if this isn't finalized yet for whatever reason, contingent upon an agreement being reached on this document. I don't know what their time frame is to start construction, et cetera, what other...
Next spring, maybe April, May.
Yeah, but they may need an approval because there may be other steps in between now and when they want to break ground, that they want to keep moving down a timeline. And my concern is they're going to be seeking approval earlier to do that, but we should kind of hold this aside and say it's all gonna be contingent upon satisfactory terms in this contract. Because otherwise, if you give them the permit and we're still trying to work out the details, they're not really
No,
gonna be interested in working with us at that point.
No, we'll absolutely condition it upon final approval.
Because this is, when you start getting into the technical weeds on this, and this is what I'm concerned about, is there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of things that we're gonna need to address. I mean, when you get to the back, when you get to the Exhibit D that they have here, and they start talking about, the types of materials you have to use, for example. Well, the proposal that Tim got didn't factor in this. Some of these materials are more expensive than what the initial proposal was. So we either have to negotiate those out, or that's gonna change, what solution we end up wanting to install there, and then that impacts everything. It's kind of a moving target at this point.
Budgets?
So budgets, let me take that out for you. So this is just, I think, what our office deals with, that doesn't include all the other departments. And if I missed something, let me know. Or if there's something in here that doesn't belong here, let me know that too, because that means I don't have to worry about it.
No, I think you need to worry about everything.
GGB, Mark should be handling some of that.
He is aware of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, he is aware of that. Yeah, so the actuals on this are about a week old. So there may be some things that have hit these accounts.
I was just quickly going through just to see if, on the landfill cap testing and maintenance, Peter would normally,
Do that?
yeah.
Okay.
Since I don't have my spreadsheet with all the accounts, I can't tell you if you missed anything. But it looks like you've hit them all. And this was run through, say, the end of September, so that's the third quarter.
Right, so this is about 75% of the year's gone by.
Yeah.
And some of these might have end of the year closeouts, so they might look like they're underspent or not spent.
That's what I'm trying to look at. Because one of the things we should be looking at in not only these budgets, but all the budgets that get presented, as I spoke earlier with John, is funds that are available from this year's budget that can be allocated for things that we're approving for next year in order to reduce next year's budget.
Yeah, buy it now while you have the money.
Yeah.
Encumber the slip, you know, the invoice.
Funds, yep.
Find anything on the auditor's, agreement when it expires? I don't know if you had time to look at that.
They haven't looked at it, I did send
Okay.
them off the management analysis report.
Okay, good.
So, they said they would have something finalized and back to us, so.
So if we're talking the 75% mark, we're pretty well within budget. Close.
Uh,
Except for BOS publications. BOS,
Background checks is gonna go up as well.
yep.
That was in today's, we signed that one today.
Looking at GGB maintenance. I don't know what we spent that would have been that high.
Get there. Is that where the town hall got put? That's $15,000, wasn't it? Is that where you put it?
No, that was $40,000.
Okay.
That came out of the, capital reserve. Or should have. It did.
I know the last 7,500 did.
Okay. But I mean,
For the
yeah.
previous payments.
If you can just
Yeah.
see if what's,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're only $95 over, but it is curious.
I'm just thinking, what if we spent 17 on? No, the paving didn't come out of there, paving for the fire
Hmm.
department.
But we gave,
So there was some question on the paving.
Tim,
And I'm gonna, at the staff meeting tomorrow, Meredith and Peter are gonna have to have a discussion about where that got charged to.
Peter asked me, and I told him it was in his budget.
I think it ended up getting charged to the fire department.
yeah, that was all part of the initial quote we got through paving, and it was all one chunk number. That's
Yeah.
on Peter.
I think we put it in.
Okay,
You wanna grab your book?
all right, so,
Yeah, because I know we didn't put anything on hers for paving.
Right.
yeah, that's why she was upset then.
Well, we can add it to hers. But she thought it was in hers?
Yeah, she thought it hit hers, and I haven't confirmed that, but since we're having a staff meeting tomorrow, that will be a good time for us to clear it up and figure out what got charged to what account.
I can remember, well, add on to this one.
Employment.
I don't think I have that here.
Hmm.
Well, I might.
Who made an unemployment claim? Was it Colada by chance, or somebody else?
What are you looking at, Bert?
Let's see, I'm on page, well, let's see, general fund, under insurances, and there's unemployment. Oh, that's just a payment to unemployment.
that's for the
Right.
insurance.
That's
That's
just
Hey,
the
just an insurance
Yeah.
payment. Okay, nobody made an actual claim. No, we don't know.
So we're expecting firm numbers anytime now on the insurances.
good.
Did we
In
get
fact, I'm
any,
surprised we didn't get them already.
did we get any feedback on possible adjustments?
So on the property and liability, it is likely to go up. And what the Primex rep explained to me is, they do let you do like a 3-year lock-in, but in transition between my predecessors, that agreement never got executed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I'm going,
we're not locked in.
Right.
because I had emailed it.
But we will get an opportunity to lock in after they give us the rates this time around.
Yeah.
They usually let you lock in for a 3-year period.
If my memory's not failing,
20,000.
we looked at that 3-year lock-in agreement before you came on board, and we declined to sign it because it did not appear to be advantageous.
Yeah,
So we may want to look at it again, but I don't see how it would be advantageous.
Yeah, yeah, there'd never been any huge jump that made it worth our while to lock in.
so, I mean, I have seen Primex, go up like 6% in a year. So, it's different when it's, 2 or 3%. Sometimes you're lucky and it does, every once in a while, goes down, but, we could look at it. We missed that opportunity for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So whatever number that she gives me in the next week or so.
For your staff meeting tomorrow, you can let Peter know it is in his budget. We
Yeah.
put $20,000 in there for paving of the fire department.
Okay.
Wow.
Code 819. There were a couple of things that were interesting at that luncheon this afternoon regarding what the Nashua Planning Commission provides.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if, he said Southwest should be providing
Similar services, yeah.
similar. And just as we go down the road, they had brought in UNH and now that I'm thinking about it, was it Southwest that came in, or was it the Office of Energy and Planning, or whatever their new name
I
is?
thought Southwest came
I
in.
thought,
was Southwest,
yeah, we had
okay.
Southwest and we had
Okay.
the UNH cooperative.
Well, one of the things that Nashua Regional Planning seemed to imply that they do are the GPS maps, or they put the data into it. And I'm understanding it's not, individual tax parcels or whatever, but where Southwest Regional was supposed to be providing us with the infrastructure locations, which we still haven't seen. I'd be curious to see how their map overlays with our tax map, considering they update them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you go to the NRPC site, they do have all their GIS maps online for every community they serve. And they do put a lot of the assessing data and everything is in there. I mean, I can click on my house and it will tell me all about my property. It'll give you the wetlands overlays. It'll give you, it's pretty, and it's it's interactive. I mean, you can,
Yeah.
I think there's 15 different layers you can put over the map.
That's a GIS system.
Yeah, it's pretty slick.
But what was being proposed here last year,
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Well, it comes out every year.
Yeah. From the Board of Assessors and some of the other boards was to hire this company that will provide us with a GIS system. And we met with the company, and there were 3 different options. One equated out $200,000.
Yeah.
And they take each deed and parcel and plot it. And then the other one was just doing a best fit scenario, and I think
Stretch
that
to
one
fit.
may have been a $50,000 or $80,000. And personally, I didn't see the benefit for town folks. You know, it would benefit realtors and whatnot, but if Southwest Regional Planning is doing they're supposed to be doing the infrastructure in town, and plotting it GIS. Well, we also pay them to do the tax maps, and that was the biggest issue that the Board of Assessors had, is they're finding that our tax maps aren't always accurate. Well, when you have the same company doing both, I would think that the accuracy would be there. So I just,
Yeah, I mean, I know the tax maps that NRPC did for us in Wilton, those were high quality.
so that might be worth a future meeting with them. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, NRPC, I mean, we also, in addition to our regular membership fee, we also contracted out certain projects with them as well, under agreement for some additional funds. But the quality of the work and the expertise of their staff, we really liked.
What was the price tag?
Boy, I'd have to go back and look.
I'd appreciate
would-
that.
Yeah,
but it would depend on what project he had them doing. Like,
Right.
I'm assuming if they
Right,
were
so
doing
we-
a master plan update,
Yeah,
it's this.
But, you know,
Right.
he's talking about an interactive,
so, well, for instance,
Situation.
for instance, we had one of their planners, I don't know if he was a planner 1 or a planner 2, but, he spent a half a day a week at our facility just supporting our different departments. And that was all part of our regular agreement with them.
But did you contract with them to do the GIS for your tax parcels?
I think they did that for because all communities are complete. So I think that was just part of their overall program. They did everybody.
And that's what I was driving at, where Nashua is doing that. We don't have that. We're being asked by boards to pay to have it done.
right.
So why not inquire?
Why aren't we getting the same level of service?
Right. Because they seem to all be funded from the same pot, so.
Yeah.
So is anybody from New Ipswich represented on their board at all?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a representative.
Jim Coffey.
And myself.
Oh,
Okay.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
fortunately,
Yeah.
they meet the same night the selectmen meet, Tuesday nights. So the board may want to consider appointing someone else who doesn't meet every Tuesday night.
Oh, you could miss, how often do they meet? Quarterly?
Quarterly.
Yeah. If you miss one meeting, it's understandable. Unless you know somebody that's candidate to request an appointment.
Could find somebody.
Speaking of which, I don't wanna forget before we leave to appoint the conservation members that were recommended.
So there's one glitch in their list, and that's Lori.
That was one of my comments. I don't think she can.
She can't,
I
she's
didn't
not
think
a
so.
resident.
Yeah, she's not a resident of town.
So I pulled the RSA, and you have to be a resident of New Ipswich. So I told her about it today, and
She Greenfield
She moved to, Ringe.
Ringe,
Yeah.
or Radiola did?
Yeah.
Oh,
Just to clarify that,
That's been
Scott,
just
does
recently.
that apply to all boards?
Maybe a couple of months.
So that was specific to conservation commissions.
Right, I remember reading that.
Yeah.
That would be for all boards.
My
So that
guess
goes
is,
planning board,
Yep.
zoning, so forth.
typically you have to be a town
That's
Yeah.
resident.
what I thought,
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah, but I'd have to pull out the RSA for each individual commission, board, et cetera, to be sure. But I would guess that they're probably all treated the same way when it comes to how you can structure any of them. That a town residency is a mandatory aspect.
Mm.
I mean, it makes sense, but,
right.
so, I looked at the list, and I said, Lori just moved to Ringe.
Yep.
About the RSA, I said, yeah, that's not gonna work. No,
And she should have known that because we
She
couldn't
did.
appoint her on the zoning board as an
so
alternate.
she did bring it up to them. And I guess the chairman said, no, it doesn't matter, we can get around that. So, and I explained to her, well, I don't know. I said, I'm reading the RSA, and I said, I don't see any exception, even if you're an alternate, around that requirement that you
Yeah.
have to be a town
That's
resident.
what I thought.
So, I said, if it isn't in the RSA as an exception, then it's not allowed.
Yeah, we have a similar problem with Ned Nichols on the planning board. He was appointed an alternate right after he sold his house.
Yeah.
So, so that's the only thing that I saw on that list that,
So do we want to, motion to accept?
Let's grab that list. I think it might be in the red folder.
Remember?
it's in there.
Okay. Read them out.
Yes, please.
Conservation Commission, its annual meeting on October 9th, 2019, recommended the following appointments. Appointing David McTeague, 15 Willard Road, as a member for 3-year term. Appoint Matt Oliveira, 594 Ashby Road, as a member for 3-year term. Appoint Jack Messy, 11 Gowen Road, as a member for a 3-year term. Appoint Bob Boynton, 161 Binney Hill, as a chairman for 1-year term. Appoint David McTeague, 15 Willard Road, as vice chairman for 1-year term. Appoint Michael Barra, 445 River Road, as an alternate member. Appoint Cleta Dudley, 244 Poor Farm Road, as an alternate member. And there is a third alternate member that is not eligible to be appointed.
I move we appoint the members as read.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I got a response back from Sauhegan Valley on the MOU. I forwarded it to them. The only issue they had was section 8, which was added, about them reporting to us. They are not in favor of that clause. So the clause you're not in favor of is SVAS will provide quarterly reports to the town that will include data on the total number of calls responded to and breakdown of the response time of calls, how many calls required a second or third tone, and calls that required mutual aid from another service. They are not in favor of that clause.
Did they
Otherwise,
state the reason for their objection?
no, they didn't. They said they're not in favor of it.
All right.
Only it again, it's one of those ones, this is the first time it had shown up on the MOU when we sent it back to them.
I do have one question about paragraph 7. It indicates adequately communicate said dispute and give reasonable and adequate time. I don't know what's adequate and reasonable. do we wanna put a number in there? 73 business days, 7 business days? Or just leave it as is?
I'm fine with it as written. I don't have an issue with it as written.
I don't, the one I have though is the other one that they don't want to have in there, and what I'm concerned with is, in a conversation I had recently with the chief, is that on a response where they weren't there, and they're calling Jaffrey to respond, because they don't have people on staff. And I'm saying, if we're paying them to provide the service, I know if it were myself, I would not want to be waiting for a Jaffrey ambulance to get here.
Well, I think that happens when more than one call goes out.
Yeah.
So they've got one vehicle already out with 2 people on, and they don't have big, because I think from what I remember, they always have kind of 2 people on call, and then if a second call goes out, you gotta hope that,
And I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
mhm.
I just want to make sure that the alternative is not taking place.
And don't we have a right to know how good the service actually is? Because we pay a considerable chunk of change for the service.
And after my discussion with the 2 chiefs last week, and my own experience elsewhere, you need that data to measure them by. That's the only way you can really start to understand the quality of the service.
Okay.
And our 2 chiefs raised the concern.
Okay. So do we
That's
want
why-
to try to get a meeting with them again to address number 8?
We could do that, or in the sake of time, and ask them, by what means would you propose to be measured in the service that you're providing? Is there another way you want to provide that information, or
Yeah, how do we
maybe they have an
evaluate
alternative? But
So-
as long as we have some way of
a
evaluating
means
it.
of evaluation?
Yeah,
Right, so this, in theory, should be something that the dispatching agency can produce relatively quickly for you.
Yeah. Well,
Originally, I was thinking that monthly, but then I said, okay, we'll cut them a little slack, and quarterly will still give us a couple of snapshots.
okay.
So if they object to that, then I'd like to understand why they don't want to report
So that would be something that they wouldn't even be burdened with.
it. Well, they'd have to place the call, they'd have to make the request to dispatch to run those reports for them. But
Yeah.
honestly, it should be just part of a standard
Operating.
public
Yeah.
safety log anyway.
the other question, or the follow-on question is, what do we compare their performance to? Do we have any, do we have any basis for comparison? I mean, they can tell us, oh, this is what we've done and this is what we're doing, but how do we know that that's good service, satisfactory service, or?
Well,
Poor
that's when you
service.
can ask other towns for their stats. You can ask Peterborough, you can ask Wilton, which is a multi-town, agency. They'll be more than happy to give you some stats on
Yeah, I mean,
what they get. And, I meant to ask, Tara Souza was at the luncheon today from Greenville, and we kinda, wrapped up that meeting today pretty quick, but I wanted to grab her to ask her what their experience has been with Sauhegan Valley, and how satisfied they are, and how much they're paying in Greenville for the same service.
well, that should be in the annual report, but.
Yeah, they, when SBAS comes in, because we kind of treat them almost similar to one of our department, come
Right.
in, show us the numbers,
Yeah.
where it is, and they do show us the calculation for what New Ipswich portion is in Greenville.
Yeah.
since those are the only two towns that they,
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will respond back to Sean and, get answers.
say, I can just Google it and find out what an average time would be. But somebody must know.
And then
We
the
can't
only
be
other
the
things I
first.
I'm sure, there's probably plenty of stats out there,
Yeah.
actually.
have, just driving past, I keep forgetting, I've driven past the other house like 3 or 4 times, I always forget to look to see if the
On
driveway's
Ashby
been
Road?
fixed, yeah.
I went by at night the other day and I'm like, where's that house?
Yeah.
I missed it.
But the subdivision on Turnpike,
Yep,
lines running right off across 130, right across Turnpike Road from the opposite side of the road, and then down that long driveway. So, who has to write that letter? Is it us, or is it the planning board, or zoning, or
it
what?
should have come from the planning board.
Right, in the original conditions, but I don't believe it was conditioned at the time.
You
It's-
don't condition
It's part of our zoning.
subdivision
Yeah,
regulations.
it's our subdivision regulation.
So, the subdivision regulations are a little bit ambiguous because I had this discussion with the building inspector when he was in earlier in the week. And he said, well, they have the poles going down, but then it's underground from the poles into each of the dwellings. So does that satisfy what's in the regulation?
But the subdivision starts at the driveway.
However, it's not clear. The regulation, it isn't clear. He also said that often, it's the utility that is obligated to bring power in so many feet, and they get to decide how they're gonna bring it in. I don't know if
That's not true.
true or not.
That is not true.
So, but there's,
They will,
the ordinance, yeah, the ordinance certainly could be tightened up a bit. It's pretty ambiguous.
were you looking at the subdivision regulations, or was he?
Yeah, we had them pulled out, and we were looking at them. And, so then, you know, and the reason we were having that discussion is we were talking about code enforcement. And, you know, we had the discussion with John when he was in here, you know, who does that? Who enforces the, you know, the planning board's ordinances or conditions? And, you know, what's the role of, you know, zoning enforcement, code enforcement, and building inspector, and how does that all play together? And I don't think we have a clear answer to that. That's something that I think all of us are gonna have to hammer out.
And Conservation wants to be involved in those procedures.
So.
Bob Boyden specifically asked me that.
So, and that actually came up as part of the discussion too, because the concern was that when issuing a building permit, that the building inspector doesn't know if there's wetlands issues on a parcel, et cetera, and there doesn't seem to be a mechanism to check that easily. So, you know, we were talking about, you know, processes here in the office that could do that. And, you know, one of the things that I've used in the past and brought it up in the staff meeting last week is when we do get requests, that it gets circulated through all the departments. So everybody gets a chance to comment before something is finally signed off on. And sometimes a department will say, it doesn't apply to me, I just check it off and say NA and move it on to the next department. And that way there, things don't fall through the cracks. Everybody, you know, then you can't come back 6 months later and say, hey, this should have been that way. No, you had your chance to review it. You got, you know, and in some cases, we used to require things like the Conservation Commissioner, the Planning Board, or the Fire Chief, or the Police Chief to actually send a email or a letter to, whatever board was taking up the application, saying, I have no comment, or these are my concerns, I'd like to see these conditions added, or whatever it may be. And that way there, you're getting a lot of different perspectives on all these different projects, and before they get signed off on.
I think that works well when you have the employee there, full-time, part-time, but if you're relying on a conservation board that meets once a month.
So sometimes that is true, you have timelines, but a lot of that can still, you can at least have the chair communicate. Even if you don't have a quorum on something like that, you could have the chair send an email response within, if you have a timeline that you have to stick within before they, a decision has to be made before they meet again, then you give them the opportunity if they choose not to respond.
Yeah, as long as we had a window of time, because I think that's in,
Or you could invest the authority with department heads such as Debbie is aware of what goes on the planning board, Lori attends all the conservation meetings.
And you could do that, Laurie and Debbie clearly,
They've got a
are
pretty
very
good
knowledgeable
handle.
about what they're saying. In fact, they're the ones that are bringing, kind of some of the holes in the process here to my attention. Giving me examples of the unintended consequences of some things that, then the town is stuck with. So, I think that's a dialogue we're gonna continue to have, and see if we can come up with something that's gonna make sense. So, fewer things fall through the cracks.
I'd like to go back though to the subdivision regulation, because I don't see the ambiguity here, and maybe you can tell me what you saw or spoke with them on. Under the subdivision regulations, under utilities, gas, electric, telephone, and cable TV services shall be installed underground unless otherwise deemed inappropriate and waived by the board, i.e. a single subdivision. Utility service installations shall cross streets perpendicular to the traveled way. All utilities shall be installed in accordance with the respective utility company's written standards. These utilities will be protected under paved areas, in conduit, and in the manner prescribed by that utility. So as I'm reading this, you have a subdivision. It says all utilities need to be installed underground. The line crossing a street to feed that subdivision should be installed perpendicular, which that I think is gonna be a hard stretch with the utility company if they're coming off a certain pole, but you can't hold the applicant to how the utility company installs their work. I think what happens is that I know the local utility company will bring in the service overhead, I believe it's to 100 feet, for no cost to an applicant.
100 or 125, something like that.
Whatever the number may be. If you want it from out at where your property starts to be underground, then you pay the premium cost for that.
Okay. Scott, would you email Debbie with the address of the property we've been talking about so that she can bring it up to the planning board tomorrow night under other business?
I'm just wondering though, what did you see as ambiguous on there?
So the way, I think that, again, it doesn't, I don't know that it's as specific as it could be as far as entry into the subdivision portion of it. And that's when, Rick brought up the fact that the utility is gonna kind of do it their way for the first 100 or 125 feet necessarily. And the other concern that I guess I understand, I haven't seen it myself, but this is like a 3-lot, it's not a private road subdivision.
No, it's a 3-lot subdivision on Turnpike Road.
Right.
Because it has 3 or more dwellings, you need to name the driveway.
Okay,
So it's not a road, it's a driveway, but it's named for 911 purposes.
okay, all right. So I'm gonna have to understand a little bit more of the specifics on that.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, so it's right up, so we know where the Dollar General is.
Yep,
That's right.
Just on the other side of, there's a tree line, so coming from this direction, it's before Dollar General.
yeah, it's kind of that first, is that gray house
Yes.
that's kind of set back?
Yeah,
That
set
first
way
house?
in the back, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, the line comes across, but then it I mean, the first house is the furthest one they put in, and they ran the lines the whole way along that tree line, all the way back to the house.
And I guess what had happened before was they went to the planning board to get their subdivision approval. And they had shown where their driveway was gonna be. And granted, the state issues the driveway permit,
Right,
because on a
correct.
state road. But they elected to ask them, well, can we put it up here? And they never came back to the planning board to ask for that. Personally, I would agree that probably a better location than running it up the middle of a field. You still should go back and let the planning board know.
Yeah,
They were saying, well, we'll put it on our as-built. Well, that's not the process.
right,
So just,
They did eventually come back.
Yeah,
did they?
they
Yeah,
did.
Yeah.
did.
oh no, I know, it's, you know, a lot of times it's, you know, give them an inch, they'll take a mile,
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
mentality.
Or it could be that, well, I didn't know that was in there. Well,
Yeah.
you should know. If you're gonna be a developer and
Right, it's a young kid, it's probably, I think
Yeah.
it's one of his first developments, and,
is there anything else?
Let's see, I did wanna mention a couple of things, I don't know if you saw that in the correspondence file, DRA is having a utilities assessment workshop, which I
Mhm.
plan on going to based on, you know, current,
Is that before the suit is?
well, this is the 29th, it's not too far away, but it sounded like it was worth the trip up.
Okay.
Okay.
I also signed Lori, Debbie, and myself up to attend the Municipal Association annual meeting. There's a lot of land use seminars in this particular session, and there was money in the budget to do it, so I have the 3 of us going up for the 2 days in Manchester. And you know, I think it'll be beneficial for them. They were kind of excited to have the opportunity to get some training. So, let's see, what else did I have to bring to you? I already did the appointments, but I did update the calendar for I stuck it in here.
What do we name that drive? Douglas Drive?
Yeah,
what's that?
yeah, it's
Douglas
Douglas.
Drive?
Oh,
A
yeah.
road away.
Yeah, yeah, that was, yeah, cause that was his middle name.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the current budget schedule, and I'm hoping it doesn't have to change again. I think everybody should be happy with it this time. Based on the input I got, I juggled as best I could, but we're gonna basically dive in next week, and then it runs through till December 17th, every Tuesday. And when I was putting this together, that I came to the realization that there just isn't that much left of this year.
I know, right?
Got
It's
to the end,
gone.
it's like, whoa,
I know, that's it, I mean, we're halfway through October already.
yeah.
I know Chief Lund emailed her budget today to the board, but when you get these other budgets, if you could get them emailed out as soon as you get them, so that we can review them
Sure, I've already started collecting some, you know, I got a few today.
Okay.
Didn't have time to scan them, but I am gonna do that.
You mean they don't send them to you electronically?
Well, part of that's my fault.
Oh.
I had two requests. Some people wanted it in PDF form so they could fill it out manually. Others wanted it to be a fillable document.
Oh,
I just haven't gotten into BMSI software enough to figure out how to do that. I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure it out, but I might have to make a call to BMSI to get a little tutorial.
and you've sent this out to all the department heads or?
That
board
went out,
members?
well, no, actually, that will be going out to the department heads. The Finance Advisory Committee did get that today.
Okay,
But the department heads, I didn't have time to get it out to them, but they understood I was reworking it, so.
Yeah. Is the Finance Advisory Committee is going to meet with us jointly on this?
They are.
Okay.
They were
just
planning on
confirm.
being here tonight because they thought we were starting tonight, and I said, yeah, you could just put it off for a week based on needing to reconstruct the calendar.
good.
But some late nights there, I have a feeling. Especially if we have other business that we have to layer on there. I've really, most of them I've only allowed
Half an hour.
about a half hour of other business, so if we get something big, then it's gonna have to
Well, I
come
think
at the
it
back
was
end.
good that you had DPW and transfer station just one night.
Well, I tried to lump the ones logically together, trying to make it as convenient for people as possible.
And then we have police and communications, okay, good.
And that's all yeah, that's all I have.
Do you have anything else, David?
I don't,
No.
do you?
No? Bert,
Nope, I'm good.
motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Budgets.